I am back in the US after spending 6 months in Europe, primarily in the UK, Germany, and Spain. At this point, I've probably spent about a year and a half over the last few years in Europe. And coming back to the US after the last 6 months has felt different. I think I'm experiencing what they call reverse culture shock, where as an American, we go off and spend time in other places and come back and learn that we just as a society do things different. We have some weird quirks that we do that we're not like anywhere else in the world. Today I want to talk about some of those things that do really feel different. I've made a list of 10 of them. I think kind of from least to most important, or the biggest cultural shock that I'm feeling, but it's hard to rank. So let's just get started. Number 10 is lack of walkability. I think anybody that goes to Europe understands that there's a lot of walking anywhere you go. And I feel like that was especially true of my last trip. Aside from a couple road trips, I took the train wherever I needed to go. I would get to my town, my destination, and I would just walk everywhere. I'd walk to the supermarket 3 or 4 times a week. I would walk along the beach when I was in a town that was on the seaside. I went from walking all of the time to coming back here. There's just no walking. I don't walk as much as I do at all, because even if I want to go for a nice walk somewhere, I have to drive to get there, because we just don't set up infrastructure for walking. Our infrastructure is for driving, it's for cars. And our, public transport is lacking. I live in a place that has, decent public transportation or transport compared to other places. There's light rail and things in Portland. It is just not the same as anywhere I've been in Europe. Everything is built for driving. Even if you just want to walk across the street to go get something to eat, a lot of times there won't be sidewalks or pavement where you can physically get from here to there. It's just easier to drive. And that has been a very difficult transition to get back to. Some of the things that feel the most different are things that I noticed while I was in Europe, and then coming back, noticed how different we really do things here. And number 9 is just that we're less conservation focused. And one of the things I was thinking about is that when I was in Germany in the summer, my cousin and I went to a mall. And I remember thinking at the time, this mall is really hot in here. It needs some aircon. It could use some AC. I guess I'd never done something like that in that time period when it was so hot in the summer there. Coming back, you walk into a place sometimes and it is unnecessarily so cold. And I think one of the examples that kind of comes to mind is if you've ever been to a place like Disney World, you will understand what I mean. It's very hot in Florida, it's very humid. And so a lot of times in the summer, you'll go from the outdoors where it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit and into a very cool air-conditioned building. But they will just be pumping that air with the doors open. And it just feels like such a lack of conservation. And I mean, it's just something that I think as Americans don't really think about a lot. And it has only been kind of the coming back and forth between the US and the UK primarily that has made me understand how much we don't really pay attention to that. I think even people in the US who think that they are, conscious about the environment and doing things for conservation, I think a lot of us still have habits that people in other countries would be appalled by. My cousin, who is from Germany, grew up in Germany, she was telling me about recycling in Germany and how they have to take glass to a certain place and then this. It's like they had all of these different rules and things and places that different things needed to go. And I just remember learning about this, if we did that in the US, no one would recycle. Like it's a convenience thing, If I can just put all of my recycling out in one bin and someone comes and picks it up and takes it away, then I'm feeling good. I can do my good deed. But if I have to do work and actually take my recycling to a recycling center, no way. There are still, states, especially in the South, where recycling just isn't that common, and you don't even have to have recycling. I know when Jeremy and I moved to Florida in 2018, we were pretty shocked that a lot of places still use styrofoam cups because it was something that we hadn't really seen that much here in the Northwest. But I mean, styrofoam is still prevalent here, which I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that in Europe. I don't know. Do you have styrofoam in Europe? I don't remember ever seeing it, but maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Now, number 8 is one that might be, I don't know if it's controversial is the right word, but I think that everyone is feeling the inflation, and everyone is kind of feeling the effects of things getting more expensive. But especially here in the US, everything does feel more expensive, which is why I put that as number 8. I think why things feel more expensive is layered, because I think we have inflation happening across the world, but we also have tariffs now in the US that we didn't have before. We have, noticeable differences in prices. For example, beef. Beef is significantly higher than it used to be. When I look at what I would pay at a butcher, it is now $3 more for a fillet than it was a year ago. But also, you have to take into consideration the fact that we add tax. Like, tax isn't already calculated into that. It's funny because when I first went to the UK, one of the things that really made me kind of self-conscious and unsure and feeling really awkward and weird as an American was the tipping culture, because we have such a tipping culture in the US that it feels weird to go to another country and not give a tip. I remember we went to a hotel. It was our very first time we had landed in London, and we went to our hotel and we dropped our bags off, and I tried to tip the person who took our bags, and she said, "Oh honey, you don't do that here." Basically was what she told me. And she was nice about it, but it was one of those moments where I will never forget that moment. It just made me feel kind of like cringy and weird about it. Like, oh, okay. So what else am I going to do wrong? And that has just been a really weird feeling that has slowly dissipated the more time I've spent in the UK, to the point where I just fully appreciate that the price that you pay is the price that you pay. You don't have to add tax, you don't have to tip. It makes it simple. I still have to do the calculation of how much is this going to cost me in US dollars, because it's definitely more than the pound, but it's at least reassuring to know that I don't have to add any tax or tip. Unless you have good service, of course, if you do like to, which I tend to, because I'm American. I can't get totally rid of that mindset. Number 7 is healthcare anxiety. So I had to have emergency surgery while I was in Gibraltar. And I've talked about making a full video about that. I did record a video. I don't know if I want to share about my surgery experience, although it was positive. It was a positive experience. I had great care. Coming back here, the anxiety of healthcare is, even with healthcare, even having, a monthly payment that I'm paying every month for my healthcare, is this going to bankrupt me if something major would happen? Because the way that healthcare in the US is set up is that even though you have a monthly premium, you still have, it's very complicated. Like, you have a copay when you go and visit the doctor. So they could say, like, you owe $10 or you owe $20 or you owe $50 every time you just go have a doctor's visit. It depends on your insurance, what you pay to see a doctor. You could have a copay to get your prescription. Sometimes they're $10. Sometimes if it's not a generic medication, it's a lot. There are just a lot of costs associated with healthcare in the US. And the anxiety that something could go wrong, especially as I get older, is becoming more real every day. And then I add on top of that the fact that I came back to the US and had follow-up appointments about my surgery that I had in Gibraltar. And I felt like they just kind of were like, okay, got me out of there. And I remember thinking, does anyone want to actually follow up and tell me what I can do that could help this, instead of just giving me a prescription, which that's what they did. I had to ask, what do I do? What should I do? How should I change my life? What can make this better? I got a prescription. That's what I got. And so I went home and Googled home remedies and things that can help, and learned that an anti-inflammatory diet is one thing that I can do to make my myself better. But I would expect a doctor or a healthcare provider to tell me that information instead of just giving me a prescription. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be kind of a through line of things here in this list where in the US, we put profit over people. Wow, I don't even think I have that as an item, but I think that is kind of an item. It feels prevalent in the healthcare field. It does give me anxiety. I'm especially curious for people who, like expats that live in other places that are American, if you have less healthcare anxiety now. I would assume that you do. Or if you are from somewhere else and now live in the US, do you have more healthcare anxiety? I'm curious about your experience with that. Let me know. And if you have been around for a little while or you're new here and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. It does help me out. Just hit that button. I don't know. Is it over here? It's over here? No, it's over here. Number 6 is portion sizes. Now, I remember going to the UK, the very first time that we went to the UK, hearing a lot about portion sizes and thinking that they were smaller, but not like inappropriately small, you know? The more time I've spent in Europe, the person in me who always wants to get a good deal and get the most for my money is in conflict with the portion sizes that we have here. I mean, I went to McDonald's last week out of convenience and because, you know, I'm driving and they have a drive-through. The large fries blew my mind. I was like, all I want is a large fries. And large it was. I don't know, I guess I just have gotten used to what a large is in other places, which is probably more like a medium here or maybe smaller. I think about even drink sizes and you look at, you know, like a large soda in the US. Let me just look up UK size large. Okay, I just wanted to look this up real quick because I was curious. So a large fast food drink in the UK is closer in size to a small or medium. UK McDonald's large is 17 to 21 ounces or 500 to 595 milliliters. While US McDonald's is 32 ounces or 946 milliliters. Actually reading those numbers is maybe even more shocking than just looking at the cup size and going, wow, that is a lot larger than I've been seeing lately. These are all gonna kind of stack into each other because number 5 is quality of food. This one is a really big one. I think food is a really, really hard adjustment. It's an easy adjustment going that direction. Coming back to the US, food is a really tough adjustment. And it's because the quality, I think the quality is layered because part of the reason our quality is not as good is because we use a lot of additives, we use a lot of things and ingredients that are banned in other places. We love red number 5. We love corn syrup. Like, it's wild to look at the back of a package and see it say that, like, the first 3 ingredients will be like high fructose corn syrup, sugar, corn syrup. It'll have 3 different kinds of sugar. And I'm just like, what is this? Like, why are there even different ones? This is so weird. And maybe someone can explain it to me because I don't understand, but it's all garbage. So I brought my friend back Reversey Percy's. I brought her family back some Reversey Percy's, and she told me these taste like fruit snacks, which I thought was interesting because they do taste like fruit snacks in the US, but I think it's because Reversey Percy's use actual fruit juice in them, and I don't know that any candy in the US really does, but a fruit snack will actually be similar. So do you have fruit snacks? Are those different? I don't even remember seeing fruit snacks in the UK. You probably have them, right? I don't know. Do you have fruit snacks in the UK? I don't remember seeing them, but it's not also something I seek out. But anyway, I guess our fruit snacks would be like Reversey Percy's because it's the only candy adjacent thing we put fruit juice in instead of just corn syrup and sugar. Another thing that I have noticed is that our eggs are less yellow here. The yolks I feel like the yolks look almost more orange when I get them pretty much anywhere in Europe. And they're oftentimes like a diluted yellow. here in the US. And, you know, we have all this weird stuff where I don't know, I guess we like wash the outsides, we bleach them. I don't even know what we do to them, but they have to be refrigerated here. It's so strange now in retrospect, after traveling so many other places where they're not refrigerated. It does feel odd to have to keep them refrigerated. That feels different. We made a similar video when we had spent 8 months in Europe two years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I remember coming back home and noticing sugar in everything, and especially even in bread. And I remember saying like, oh, I love my Dave's Killer bread because it's like an actual good quality bread as opposed to most of the stuff in the US. And someone still pointed out, hey, look, sugar's still a high ingredient. Yes, it is still a high ingredient. That's weird. I did find a bread that does not have sugar that's actually a good, nutritious US bread. It's called Ezekiel bread. I don't know if y'all in the US have heard of this. You have to mostly buy it in the freezer. It seems to come in the freezer. I think because it actually doesn't have a lot of preservatives in it. I don't know that it's like the best quality because it's frozen, but it's the best alternative to, I don't know, cake as you would call it in the UK. Number 4 is, I think these kind of all stack on top of each other. One of the biggest shocks and feelings of just, I felt completely disoriented. My first time back, I went into a supermarket and just felt completely weirded out by it. Like, what is this place? Why is it so large? And I think it's because we are overwhelmed by too many choices. I guess maybe that speaks to an overall like consumerism thing, but the thing that happened to me was that I went to a supermarket. It's huge, the biggest supermarkets that you've ever seen, but they're just a standard size here in the US. I go down the aisle that has water or, you know, water or soda or like the drinks aisle. And I have 40 choices of water. Who needs that many choices of water? It's water. That speaks to the volume of just like the reverse culture shock of being back, of just how much consumerism there is here. You know, there wouldn't be 40 choices if all of these brands weren't trying to compete with each other. And then, you know, this brand has a new update, and this one has a new flavor, and this one has new packaging. And I'm like, oh, that's cute packaging. I love that. And I'm like, what am I doing? It's the packaging. And then I wonder why I feel overwhelmed. And it's because everywhere I go and everything I do and everywhere I look, everyone wants you to choose them, choose their product. Number 3 is hustle culture. And this is something that I've talked about before on this channel, but it feels more prevalent now. You gonna tell them? You gonna go protect us? Talking about the problems of consumerism while I'm getting an Amazon order delivered. Hustle culture feels really related to consumerism because the consumerism is all about like buy more, buy more, buy more, buy more, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy our product, buy more. And the hustle culture here feels like the do more version of that, you know? It's like, you gotta do this and you gotta do that. I don't know why, but these kinds of videos always end up in my Instagram feed, in my algorithm of just hustle culture of like, here's how you gotta do, and here's how you gotta run your business, and here's how you gotta do this. And I'm just, do we have to do all these things? What happened to just having a nice time? Is that too much to ask for? You know, my boss always says, time is your most valuable currency, and how you spend your time matters. And I really believe that that's true. And I think that what I don't like about the hustle culture here is that it's basically telling you, it's like we're telling each other as a society that how our time should be spent is working. And I just don't think that that's healthy as a society. The infrastructure of how everything is set up here is such that a lot of people have to have a hustle mindset in order to survive. I don't know how we fix that. But as someone who has a problem with feeling guilty about taking time off for myself, it is something that is worth exploring as a culture of why do we have this attitude that we have to push ourselves? And can we not have a more leisurely approach to things? I'm based in Washington State, and we have basically a funding that, we pay for it, employees pay for it, you pay into it, that allows you to take time off if you get sick. But a lot of companies don't have that. A lot of companies don't have PTO. A lot of companies don't have, holidays. And I look at, my cousin in Germany who basically took off, I think around 2 years when she had her son, and then went back to work part-time. And that, that is just taken care of because of the taxes that she pays into. Feeling a little bit like we've been duped. My old number 2 is that people are less nice and feel less genuine, which I think is true. I think more importantly, what my real number 2 should be is just that we aren't really nice to each other and we don't really look out for each other. And I think kind of tying into the hustle culture, I feel like as a society, we've kind of been duped. We've been convinced to look at each other and what each other have, and what we should work harder, we should do more, we should buy more. What do they have? What do I have versus what do they have? And what does he have? And I think that has created a me centric attitude here in the US, that we are so focused on what I have versus what they have, and what I'm getting versus what they're getting. It's like we've been duped to make it about each other and who's taking what from each other, instead of what are corporations taking from us? Why are corporations not paying taxes, but I am? How is that fair? How is a billionaire finding loopholes that I can't? I think the most difficult part about being back in the US is that I see the way that we treat each other all the time, and it is different from how people in other countries treat each other. I feel like I use the UK a lot as an example, but it's because I've spent the most time there. But when I'm driving on the road in the UK, and 2 lanes are merging, people will take turns. This person, that person, this person, that person. And very rarely will some jerk say I'm more important, I'm gonna take an extra turn. But that happens all the time in the US. People will drive as far as they can to cut off whoever they can. And I don't know if it's just because we lack shame as a society or what. There's a collective understanding of what's right and wrong. And I just don't know that we have that as much here in the US. And that's an unfortunate realization to come to. But it is. And I'm not saying this about everyone, because part of the, I'm not saying this about everyone, it has been very difficult to be back in the US. But the one thing that has been really good is just to be able to be around friends and people that I love, and just being amongst my peers. And so I think when I make broad generalizations, they're just that. They're generalizations, but they are, I think, kind of the overarching vibe that I get from society. But that's okay. Let's end on a good note. Let's go to number 1. Oh, it's safety. Oh, it is safety. It is wild that the more time that I spend in other places, the less safe I feel in my own country. And, I went to Bradford. I put that video out a couple weeks ago in the UK, and I had a lot of people tell me about how unsafe it was, how dangerous it is, this and that. And I'm not saying that people can't have experiences and feel unsafe in places. I'm not trying to, judge anyone else's feelings on a place like that. But I didn't feel unsafe in Bradford. That was my experience. I stayed towards the city center, and I was there in the daytime. But at no point did I feel unsafe there. Where I come back to the US, and now I'm in a place where I'm walking down the street and I don't know, does that guy have a gun? Does that guy have a gun? I don't know. Probably. Could be. I don't know. I started running with mace. I bought a special thing that has a strap so that I can just run in my neighborhood where, I don't know, I've never done that before. I certainly didn't do it. I mean, I traveled throughout Spain and Germany and the UK and Gibraltar and went running all times of day and night and never thought I should buy mace. This doesn't feel like a safe place. And now I'm back in the US and I did buy mace, and that is something that I feel kind of conflicted about. I almost feel guilty. I distinctly remember getting comments and people asking us about, you know, what we felt like when we went to places like the UK for the first time and how much safer we must feel. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know, because for so long, like, the gun culture is just what you're used to. It's you know, it's what you're used to. I have a group text with my friends, and recently it was brought up in the group. We were kind of comparing active shooter drills and active shooter safety. And one of my friends posted a picture to the group of what her recommended actions were, and they were kind of ridiculous. And we were kind of just exchanging, like, what is a typical active shooter drill? And I thought nothing of it at the time, but now that I'm editing this video, it's making me kind of see how unusual that is. Being on the West Coast where earthquakes are prominent, I've definitely gone through earthquake drills and things like that for work. I just can't believe that we treat an active shooter in the same way that we do it, like preparing for a natural disaster. That is a very strange concept. Does anywhere else in the world do active shooter drills and training and prepare for those kinds of things? Because I don't know that they do. I don't know that they do. And does anyone else do this? I think it's just us, and that's weird. That's not normal. And there you have it. Those are the, I guess, 10 biggest things that have felt different after being back in the US. I don't think it's as depressing as I maybe made it out to be, or maybe it is. I don't know. I have been weighing my options of other places to live and still open to suggestions. So if you have any ideas, or maybe you are an expat that lives somewhere else, let me know what your experience has been like. And if you've ever been to the US as someone from another country, I would love to know what your first impressions or some of your culture shocks were about visiting the US for the first time.